I sat in the private dining room of Morton's Steakhouse, surrounded by my entire family, supposedly celebrating my college graduation. My parents, Richard and Patricia Caldwell, sat at the head of the table. My younger sister Emily grinned beside them. Extended relatives filled the other seats. My mother stood, clinking her crystal glass. Instead of a toast, she slid an envelope across the white tablecloth. "From all of us," she announced, her voice dripping with satisfaction. I opened it. Inside was a formal disownment letter, legally drafted, complete with signatures from both parents. Emily raised her phone, recording my reaction, smirking behind the screen. The room erupted in laughter. I looked at the papers, then at their faces. I folded the letter carefully, slipped it into my jacket pocket, stood up and said, "Thank you for this." Then I walked out of that restaurant without looking back. They had absolutely no idea what I had already set in motion. The cool Portland evening air hit my face as I crossed the parking lot. My hands stayed steady even though adrenaline coursed through my veins like electricity. I reached my car, a 15-year-old Honda Civic I had bought myself with money from working campus IT support. I sat behind the wheel and let out a long, controlled breath. 22 years. That is how long I had been the unwanted son in the Caldwell family. My father, Richard Caldwell, built a commercial real estate empire in Portland, Oregon, worth approximately $8 million. He bought struggling properties, renovated them, and flipped them for substantial profits. He was ruthless in business and equally cold at home. My mother, Patricia, came from old Portland money. Her family had owned lumber mills back when Oregon was still logging country. She brought another $3 million into the marriage, along with connections to every country club and charity board in the city. Then there was Emily, 19 years old, blonde, bubbly, and perfect in every way that mattered to our parents. Cheerleader captain in high school, homecoming queen. Accepted to the University of Southern California with plans to join the best sorority on campus. She was everything they wanted in a child. I was everything they did not. From my earliest memories, I was the problem. Too quiet, too bookish, too serious. I preferred libraries to football games. I chose debate team over sports. I asked questions they found irritating. Why do we need 3 cars? Why don't we donate to the homeless shelter downtown? Why does Emily get a bigger birthday party than me? The comparisons started early. When I brought home straight A's in 5th grade, my father glanced at my report card and said, "Good, that's what I expect." When Emily brought home B's and C's in 7th grade, they threw her a celebration dinner. When I won the state debate championship at 16, neither parent attended. They were at Emily's cheer competition in Seattle instead. She placed 4th. They acted like she had won Olympic gold. High school became a battleground. I wanted to study engineering at MIT. I had the grades, the test scores, the recommendations. My guidance counselor said I was a shoo-in. My parents refused to pay a single dollar unless I attended the University of Oregon and studied business. "You'll join the family company," my father announced over dinner one night. "That's your future." I tried to negotiate. I showed them scholarship offers. I explained that computer science was a growing field with incredible opportunities. My mother laughed. "You're not going across the country to play with computers, Mason. You'll stay here where we can keep an eye on you." So I compromised. I attended the University of Oregon, but I studied computer science instead of business. That decision cost me dearly. My parents slashed my allowance to barely enough for textbooks. Meanwhile, Emily received a brand new BMW for her 16th birthday, a car that cost more than my entire first-year tuition. I worked. Campus IT support, tutoring other students, freelance web design on weekends. I paid for my own food, my own clothes, my own everything. My parents attended 0 events during my 4 years of college. Not one football game where I worked security. Not one academic awards ceremony where I received honors. Not one senior presentation where I demonstrated my capstone project. But they never missed one of Emily's events. The final betrayal came 6 months ago, right before spring semester. I needed to pay a lab fee and went to check my college fund balance. My grandfather, my father's father, had established that fund when I was born. He died when I was 10. Before he passed, he told me that fund would cover all my education expenses and then some. It should have had $70,000 in it. It had $8,000. I printed the transaction history at the bank. There were regular withdrawals over the past 3 years. $30,000 paid to Pi Beta Phi National Sorority. $20,000 labeled European Cultural Studies Tour. $12,000 marked vehicle down payment. Every single withdrawal benefited Emily. I drove straight to my parents' house, transaction records in hand. I found them in the living room watching television. I spread the papers on the coffee table. "You stole from my college fund," I said. My voice stayed calm, but my hands shook. My father barely glanced at the documents. "We borrowed it. Emily needed things." "Borrowed? You took money my grandfather left for my education and spent it on Emily's sorority dues and her trip to France." My mother sighed like I was being tedious. "Mason, don't be dramatic. We still paid for your college. You should be grateful we did that much. This was my money. Grandfather left it specifically for me." My father stood up then, all 6 feet 2 inches of him, and looked down at me with contempt. "Nothing in this family is specifically yours. My grandfather, my father's father, had established that fund when I was born. He died when I was 10. Before he passed, he told me that fund would cover all my education expenses and then some. It should have had $70,000 in it. It had $8,000. I printed the transaction history at the bank. There were regular withdrawals over the past 3 years. $30,000 paid to Pi Beta Phi National Sorority. It was my grandfather's original will, dated 3 months before his death, notarized and legally binding. In that will, my grandfather left me a beach property in Cannon Beach, Oregon. The document described it as a 3-bedroom cottage with ocean views, worth approximately $1.2 million at the time. He also left me a stock portfolio containing shares in various companies, estimated at $200,000 when he died. I never received any of it. My parents had forged documents. They claimed the property as their own. They had been renting it out as a vacation property for 15 years, pocketing every dollar. They transferred the stocks into accounts under their control. They erased my inheritance like it never existed. That night, after they kicked me out of their house, I made a decision. I took that will to an attorney. Actually, I took it to 3 different attorneys before I found the right one. His name was Gerald Hutchins, a probate and estate litigation specialist with 30 years of experience. He listened to my entire story, examined the will, and said 6 words that changed everything. "We can make this right, Mason." And sitting now in my car outside Morton's Steakhouse, the disownment letter in my pocket, I smiled. Because in 6 months of working with Gerald Hutchins, I had built a case so airtight that my parents never saw it coming. The twist they did not expect? The disownment letter they just gave me was not an ending. It was evidence. Evidence of their intent to permanently exclude me from the family and any assets. Evidence that would strengthen every claim I was about to file against them. They thought they were humiliating me one final time. Instead, they had just handed me the last piece of the puzzle. I drove across Portland, but not toward campus. Not toward the tiny dorm room my parents thought I still lived in. Instead, I drove to the industrial district on the east side, to a neighborhood they would never visit, and pulled up to a modest apartment building. For the past 6 months, I had been living a carefully constructed double life. By day, I attended my classes, submitted my assignments, and walked across campus like every other college senior. I smiled at acquaintances. I studied in the library. I presented the image of Mason Caldwell, the quiet computer science student barely scraping by. By night, I became someone else entirely. Someone building a legal case that would dismantle my parents' world brick by brick. I unlocked my apartment, a 1-bedroom unit I rented for $900 a month, and tossed my graduation gown over the couch. The walls were covered with documents, timelines, bank statements, rental property records, forged signatures compared to legitimate ones. Every piece of evidence organized by category and date. My phone rang. Gerald Hutchins. "How did it go?" His voice was warm, grandfatherly, everything my actual grandfather might have sounded like if he had lived longer, exactly as predicted. They gave me a disownment letter at dinner. My sister recorded the whole thing for entertainment. I have it all on my watch recorder. Gerald chuckled. Unbelievable. They really don't understand legal consequences, do they? They think they're untouchable. Well, they're about to learn otherwise. Come by the office tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. We'll file everything. I hung up and sat down at my small kitchen table. 6 months of work spread before me in manila folders and 3 ring binders. Let me tell you how we got here. After finding my grandfather's will, I spent 2 weeks researching attorneys. I could not afford the big downtown firms with their $1,000 hourly rates. I needed someone skilled but willing to work with a broke college student. I found Gerald through a legal aid referral service. He normally worked with veterans navigating VA benefits, but estate fraud intrigued him. Our first meeting lasted 4 hours. I brought everything I had found. The original will. Photos of the Cannon Beach property listings online, advertised as Caldwell Family Vacation Rental. Bank records showing rental income deposits into my parents' account. Stock transfer documents with signatures that did not match my grandfather's handwriting from other papers I had. Gerald examined each item with meticulous care. Then he told me the scope of what my parents had done. The beach property had been generating rental income of approximately $90,000 per year for 15 years. That was over $1.3 million that legally belonged to me, stolen and spent by my parents. The stock portfolio, if it had been properly managed from the date of my grandfather's death 12 years ago, would now be worth close to $800,000 based on market performance. But it got worse. Gerald's investigation, which I paid for by working 3 part-time jobs simultaneously, revealed additional fraud. My parents had opened credit cards in my name when I was 17 years old. They used my social security number to apply for retail store cards, gas cards, even a Visa with a $10,000 limit. They maxed them out and made minimum payments, destroying my credit score before I even knew I had one. When I turned 18 and tried to open my first bank account, I was denied. I thought it was a mistake. It was not. My credit report showed late payments, high balances, and delinquent accounts I never authorized. Gerald helped me document all of it. We filed identity theft reports with the credit bureaus. We gathered statements showing charges I could not possibly have made because I was in high school classes or at debate tournaments with time-stamped evidence. We built an identity theft case alongside the inheritance fraud. For 6 months, I lived like a monk. I worked my IT job 20 hours a week at $12 an hour. I tutored students in computer programming for $25 per session. I did freelance website design on weekends for local small businesses. Every dollar went to attorney fees, court filing costs, and investigation expenses. I ate ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches. I wore the same 4 outfits in rotation. I cut my own hair. I stopped going out with friends because I could not afford a $5 beer. I studied in my apartment instead of coffee shops to save money. But I documented everything. Every time my parents forgot my birthday while throwing Emily an extravagant party, I wrote it down with dates and details. Every time they mocked my major or told me I was wasting my potential, I recorded it. Every cruel comment, every broken promise, every moment of emotional neglect went into a journal that became evidence of a pattern of mistreatment. 2 weeks before graduation, everything came together. The court ruled on our initial filings. The judge reviewed the evidence, examined the will, compared signatures, and issued a sealed judgment in my favor. But the judgment would not be executed until I chose to trigger it. Gerald advised me to wait. Let them think they've won, he said. Let them get comfortable. Arrogant people make mistakes when they feel invincible, so I planted a seed. 3 weeks before graduation, I casually mentioned to my mother during one of our rare phone calls that it would be nice to have a family dinner for graduation. Just a suggestion, nothing more. I knew her narcissistic personality would turn it into an opportunity. An opportunity to remind me one final time that I did not measure up. An opportunity to humiliate me publicly. She took the bait exactly as I predicted. And tonight, they delivered. The disownment letter was legally meaningless. I am 22 years old, an adult. They cannot disown an adult child from anything except their personal affections, which I never had anyway. But that letter, combined with my mother's announcement from all of us, created a paper trail of intent intent to defraud me of my inheritance, intent to exclude me permanently from family assets, intent to cause emotional harm for their entertainment. The recording on my watch captured everything. My mother's satisfied smile, my father's smirk, Emily's phone held high, documenting my reaction, the laughter from relatives who thought this was acceptable behavior. All of it admissible as evidence. The twist they never saw coming? I wanted that dinner to happen. I orchestrated the very event they thought they controlled. They believed they were delivering a final humiliation. Instead, they gave me the smoking gun that would blow their entire defense apart. I pulled the watch off my wrist and connected it to my laptop. The video file downloaded in seconds. Clear audio, clear video of the entire room. My mother's voice saying, "You were never really part of this family anyway." My father adding, "This just makes it official." Perfect. I emailed the file to Gerald with a simple subject line, "Final evidence attached." He replied within minutes, "Outstanding work, Mason. See you at 9. Tomorrow we move." I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. Tomorrow, sheriff deputies would knock on my parents' door with legal papers that would shatter their comfortable world. Tomorrow, they would learn that the son they dismissed and belittled had spent 6 months building a case they could not fight. Tomorrow, justice would start. But tonight, I allowed myself one moment of quiet satisfaction. Not revenge, not cruelty, just the knowledge that I had stood up for myself using intelligence, patience, and the law. My grandfather would have been proud. At 9 o'clock the next morning, I sat in Gerald Hutchins' office on the 3rd floor of a modest building downtown. His paralegal, a sharp woman named Carla, had already prepared all the filing documents. Stacks of legal papers covered the conference table. Gerald reviewed the watch recording from last night's dinner. He watched the entire thing in silence, his expression growing darker with each passing minute. When my mother announced the disownment with that satisfied smile, Gerald removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. 22 years of this, he said quietly. 22 years of making you feel worthless. And they think this is funny. Does it help the case? I asked. Help it? Mason, this recording, combined with the disownment letter, proves malicious intent. They didn't just hide your inheritance through negligence or poor record-keeping. They deliberately, systematically destroyed your relationship with them while stealing what your grandfather left you. This elevates everything. Carla spoke up. We're filing 4 separate actions. First, immediate transfer of the Cannon Beach property to Mason with a full accounting of all rental income for 15 years plus interest. Second, transfer of all stock portfolios with accounting for growth Mason would have received. Third, criminal identity theft charges for the credit cards. Fourth, a civil suit for emotional distress and fraud. Gerald nodded. The sheriff's office has deputies ready. Your parents will be served simultaneously at their home and at their real estate office. The shock value is intentional. We want them scrambling. When? I asked. Noon today. 2 hours from now. My stomach tightened. This was real. After 6 months of preparation, we were actually doing this. Mason, Gerald said, leaning forward. Once we file, there's no going back. Your parents will fight. They'll hire expensive attorneys. They'll try to destroy your credibility. They'll make this ugly. Are you absolutely certain? I thought about every birthday they forgot, every award ceremony they skipped, every time they told me I was not good enough, every dollar they stole from my education, every credit card they opened in my name, every year they collected rent on a property my grandfather meant for me. I'm certain, I said. Good. Let's proceed. At exactly 12 noon, my phone started ringing. My father's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. Then my mother called. Then my father again. In 10 minutes I received 14 calls. I listened to the first voicemail on speaker so Gerald and Carla could hear. My father's voice was pure rage. You ungrateful little piece of trash. You think you can sue your own family? You think you can come after what I built? I will destroy you, Mason. I will bury you in legal fees until you're bankrupt. You'll regret this for the rest of your pathetic life. You hear me? You're done. Finished. I'll make sure you never work in this state again. The message ended. Gerald raised his eyebrows. Threatening language. That'll look great in court. Save all of these. My mother's voicemail was different. She was crying, her voice breaking between sobs. Mason, baby, please. Please don't do this. Think of the family. Think of your sister. This will destroy us. We can talk about this. We can work something out. Just call me back. Please, sweetheart. I'm begging you. Carla snorted. Now she calls you sweetheart. Where was that energy for 22 years? More calls came. Emily sent a barrage of text messages. What the hell is wrong with you? You're trying to steal from mom and dad? They gave you everything, and this is how you repay them? You're a disgusting human being. I hope you're happy destroying this family. Everyone is going to know what a selfish monster you are. I blocked all of them. Every number. Every contact. I did not need their voices in my head anymore. Gerald's phone rang. He answered, listened, and smiled. Thank you, Sheriff. Yes, all served successfully. Appreciate your help. He hung up and nodded to me. Both locations confirmed. Your parents have the documents. Their real estate office got served in front of clients and employees. Maximum impact. What happens now? I asked. Now they panic. They'll call attorneys, probably several. They'll scramble to understand the scope of what we filed. By end of business today, we'll likely receive a call from their legal representation. And Mason, when that happens, you say nothing to anyone except through me. Not one word. Understand? Understood. I left Gerald's office and drove to Cannon Beach, 100 miles of coastal highway. Nearly 2 hours. I had never been to the property my grandfather left me. My parents had kept me away from it my entire life, claiming it was rented out constantly or under renovation or not suitable for visitors. I pulled up to the address listed in the will. A beautiful cottage sat 50 yards from the ocean, surrounded by shore pines and beach grass, weathered cedar shingles, a wraparound porch, large windows facing the water, the kind of place people dream about. My grandfather had owned this, and he left it to me. I used the key Gerald had obtained through the court order. The door opened into a living room frozen in time, furniture from the 1980s, family photos on the walls, and there, above the fireplace, a portrait of my grandfather holding a small boy, me. I was maybe 4 years old in the photo. My grandfather held me on his shoulders, both of us grinning at the camera. I had no memory of this moment, but the love in his expression was unmistakable. I walked through the house slowly. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen with ocean views. Everything was clean but dated, preserved exactly as it had been when my grandfather died. My parents had rented it out furnished, apparently never bothering to remove his personal belongings. In the master bedroom, I found a desk, and in the desk drawer, I found journals. My grandfather's handwriting filled page after page. I sat on the bed and started reading. Most entries were mundane. Notes about property maintenance, fishing trips, observations about birds and tides. But scattered throughout were entries about family, about my father, about me. One entry, dated 18 months before my grandfather died, stopped me cold. Richard came by today, asking about the property value. He wants me to sell it and give him the money for a new development project. I refused. This house is for Mason. Richard doesn't understand that some things matter more than money. He's become hard. Patricia makes him worse. They care only about status and appearance. They're raising Emily the same way. But Mason is different. He has Patricia's late father's gentleness and curiosity. He asks questions about everything. He wants to understand how the world works. I see myself in him. This house will be his someday. He'll need it. He'll need a place to escape from them. My hands shook holding the journal. My grandfather knew. He understood what kind of people my parents were. He tried to protect me the only way he could. I kept reading. More entries painted a picture of my grandfather's growing concern about my father's business practices and my mother's social climbing. He worried about how they treated me. He documented conversations where they complained about my interests and my personality. Then I found an entry from 2 months before he died. I've updated my will. The beach house goes to Mason, along with the stock portfolio. I've also set up a trust that matures when he turns 25. Richard will be furious, but this is right. Mason will need these resources to build a life independent of his parents. I've told Sarah about this. She promised to watch out for him if Richard tries anything dishonest. I'm at peace with this decision. Sarah, my mother's younger sister, I barely knew her. She lived in Boston and rarely visited. Why would my grandfather trust her? I was about to keep reading when something fell out of the journal. A small key taped to a piece of paper. My grandfather's handwriting on the paper. For Mason, when he's ready. Bank of the Pacific, Box 317. A safety deposit box. My grandfather had left me something else. Something my parents knew nothing about. The twist hit me like a wave. There was more. More money, more evidence, more resources I had not yet discovered. My grandfather had been even more thorough than I realized. I grabbed the key and the journal and headed back to my car. The Bank of the Pacific had a branch in downtown Portland. I could be there before they closed. This wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. The Bank of the Pacific sat on a corner in the financial district, all glass and polished granite. I walked in, holding the key and my driver's license, feeling like I was about to open a treasure chest in some adventure story. The bank manager, a woman named Helen, examined the key and checked her records. Box 317 was opened by Robert Caldwell 12 years ago. It's been untouched since. I'll need to verify your identity. I provided my license and answered security questions. Helen led me to the vault, a temperature-controlled room lined with metal boxes. She used her master key and my key together to open Box 317, then left me alone in a private viewing room. Inside the box, a thick envelope, stock certificates in plastic sleeves, and another letter from my grandfather. My hands trembled as I opened the letter. Dear Mason, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're old enough to need what I've left you. I hope Richard did the right thing and gave you the beach house and stocks I left in my will. But knowing my son, he probably tried to keep it all. That's why I created this backup. In this box you'll find $500,000 in stock certificates for companies I believe will grow substantially. These are separate from the stocks mentioned in my will. Documentation of a trust fund containing $200,000 that matures when you turn 25. This is in addition to everything else. And finally, evidence I've collected of Richard's business practices. Use it if you need it. I love you, Mason. You were the best part of my life in those final years. Be strong, be honest, be nothing like your father, your grandfather, Robert. I pulled out the stock certificates. Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Google. $500,000 invested in the early 2000s in companies that had since exploded in value. A quick calculation in my head suggested these stocks were now worth over $2 million. The trust fund documentation was next. $200,000 held in a financial institution in Seattle, maturing when I turned 25. In 3 years, I would receive that money automatically. Then I found the evidence my grandfather mentioned. A manila folder contained copies of documents related to my father's business deals, tax returns with questionable deductions, contracts with inflated expenses, and kickback clauses, bank statements showing money moved through shell companies to avoid taxes. My grandfather had documented years of my father's shady practices. This was not just about my inheritance anymore. This was evidence that could send my father to prison for tax evasion and fraud. I sat in that viewing room for 20 minutes, processing everything. My grandfather had been incredibly thorough. He knew his son was corrupt. He knew my parents would try to cheat me, so he built multiple layers of protection. The beach house and stocks in the will, these hidden stocks and trust fund, and evidence to use as leverage if needed. I gathered everything, signed the paperwork to officially transfer ownership of the box to my name, and drove straight to Gerald's office. He listened to everything, examined the documents, and actually laughed. Your grandfather was a strategic genius. He built a legal fortress around you, and your parents never knew. What do we do with the evidence about my father's business practices? We hold it. For now, it's leverage. If they fight dirty, we go nuclear. Over the next 2 days, my parents' response took shape. They hired a legal team from Seattle, 3 attorneys from one of the biggest firms in the Pacific Northwest. the kind of firm that charges $800 per hour. Their lawyers contacted Gerald with a settlement offer. They would give me the beach house if I dropped all other claims. No rental income, no stocks, no identity theft charges, just the house. Gerald presented the offer to me in his office. "What do you want to do?" "Counteroffer," I said. "I want the beach house, all rental income with interest, both stock portfolios, a public apology, and they must pay to repair the credit damage from the identity theft." "They'll refuse." "I know, but I want them to understand I'm not negotiating from weakness." Gerald delivered my counteroffer. As predicted, my parents refused. Their attorneys sent back a threatening letter, suggesting that if I did not accept their generous offer, they would vigorously defend against these baseless claims and seek sanctions against me for filing frivolous lawsuits. Meanwhile, my parents launched a different kind of attack. They started a smear campaign among extended family and their social circle. Phone calls went out to aunts, uncles, cousins. "Mason is lying. Mason is greedy. Mason had a mental breakdown and is making wild accusations. We've been nothing but generous to him, and this is how he repays us." My Aunt Julie called me, crying, "Mason, honey, your mother says you're trying to steal their retirement savings. She says you're claiming they owe you millions of dollars that don't exist. This doesn't sound like you. What's really going on?" I calmly explained the situation. The hidden will, the stolen rental income, the identity theft. I offered to send her copies of the legal documents. She was silent for a long moment. Then, "Oh my God, Mason, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Your mother made it sound like you were having some kind of crisis." "I'm not having a crisis, Aunt Julie. I'm just claiming what's legally mine." Other relatives were not so understanding. My Uncle Thomas, my father's brother, left me a voicemail that was pure venom. "You little punk. You think you can go after your own father? Family means something, Mason. But you wouldn't know about that, would you? You've always been a selfish, ungrateful brat. If I see you, we're going to have a very unpleasant conversation." I saved that voicemail too. More evidence of the family's hostility. Then Emily made her move on social media. She posted on Instagram with a long caption about how I was trying to destroy our family over money and how some people can't handle success so they tear others down instead. She included the video from graduation night. My face as I opened the disownment letter. The moment carefully edited to remove the context, making it look like I was just upset about a normal family disagreement. The post got hundreds of comments, most from her sorority sisters and high school friends who had no idea what was really happening. "Your brother is so ungrateful. Family is everything. How could he do this? Stay strong, Emily. You don't need that negativity." But some comments were different. People who actually watched the video carefully and saw the cruelty. "Wait, they gave him a disownment letter at his graduation dinner? That's messed up. Why were you filming his reaction like it was entertainment? This seems really cruel regardless of what the fight is about. Who disowns their kid at a restaurant?" The post started to backfire. More people began questioning why a family would do something so publicly humiliating. Emily deleted it within 6 hours, but screenshots had already spread. Then something unexpected happened. Family friends started reaching out to me privately. People who had known my grandfather. People who had watched me grow up and noticed how differently my parents treated me compared to Emily. One of them was Frank Morrison, my grandfather's business partner for 30 years. He called me directly. "Mason, your grandfather told me about the beach house. He told me he was leaving it to you because he knew Richard couldn't be trusted. I should have checked on this years ago. I'm sorry I didn't." "It's not your fault, Frank. I want to help. I'll testify if you need me. I can speak to your grandfather's intentions and your father's character. Robert was my best friend. He'd want me to do this." Frank became my first character witness. Others followed. People who remembered my grandfather's love for me. People who had seen my parents' coldness over the years. The case was getting stronger every day. Then came the court hearing for a temporary restraining order. My parents had filed a motion trying to freeze me out of the beach property, claiming I was unlawfully occupying their asset. The hearing was in front of Judge Sarah Martinez, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with a reputation for hating legal games. My parents' lead attorney, a man named Douglas Brennan, argued that I was essentially squatting in a property that belonged to my parents through years of established ownership. Gerald stood up and calmly dismantled the argument. He presented the original will. He presented the forged transfer documents with signature analysis showing they were fraudulent. He presented the rental income records. Judge Martinez listened with increasing displeasure. Then she asked the question that changed everything. "Mr. Brennan, are you telling me your clients have been collecting rent on a property that was bequeathed to the plaintiff by his deceased grandfather?" Brennan stammered. "Your Honor, the situation is complex. There are questions about the validity of that will." "Questions? I see a notarized will with clear language. I see evidence your clients forged documents. Where are these questions?" Then Brennan made a critical mistake. He called Emily to testify, thinking she could provide testimony about family dynamics that would make me look bad. Emily took the stand wearing an expensive dress and heels. She looked confident, rehearsed. Gerald's cross-examination started gently. "Emily, were you aware that your grandfather owned a beach house in Cannon Beach?" "Yes." "Did your parents ever discuss who inherited that property when your grandfather died?" "They said it came to them." "Did they ever mention that the will left it to your brother Mason?" She hesitated. "No." "Never? Not once in 12 years?" "No." Gerald pulled out a document. "I have here a text message exchange between you and your mother from 3 years ago. May I read it?" The judge nodded. Gerald read, "Emily, October 15th, 3 years ago. You texted your mother, 'When I graduate, can I have the beach house for a sorority weekend?' Your mother responded, 'We'll see. That property is complicated. Technically it was supposed to go to Mason, but we're managing it.' You replied, 'Lowell Mason doesn't need a beach house. Can it be mine eventually?' Your mother said, 'Eventually, yes.' The courtroom went silent. Emily's face turned red. "So you did know the property was supposed to go to Mason," Gerald said quietly. That was just. I didn't really understand. You understood enough to ask your mother if you could have it instead. You knew your brother's inheritance was being kept from him, and you wanted it for yourself." Emily started crying. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of embarrassment and anger at being caught. The judge's expression hardened. "Step down, Miss Caldwell." Emily practically ran from the witness stand. Judge Martinez did not even bother deliberating. "I'm ruling in favor of the plaintiff on all counts related to the property. Mr. Caldwell, you are granted immediate full possession of the Cannon Beach property. I'm also freezing the defendant's assets related to the rental income pending a full accounting. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office for potential fraud charges. This appears to be a clear case of inheritance, theft, and document forgery." She banged her gavel. "We're adjourned." My father's face turned purple. My mother looked like she might faint. Emily was still crying in the gallery. I walked out of that courtroom with Gerald, and for the first time in 6 months, I felt something close to victory. The twist that shocked everyone? Emily's own words, her own text messages, had proven my parents knowingly stole my inheritance and planned to give it to her instead. She had destroyed their defense in less than 5 minutes of testimony. Justice was coming, and my family finally understood I was not backing down. The week after the hearing, my parents' world began collapsing in slow motion. Richard's business partners started asking questions. If he forged documents to steal from his own son, what else might he have forged? 3 major clients pulled their contracts, citing concerns about ethical practices. His office manager quit, unwilling to be associated with the scandal. Patricia's country club friends suddenly became unavailable for lunch. The gossip network that had sustained her social life for 20 years turned against her. The same women who had helped her mock me behind my back were now whispering about her parenting and her character. Meanwhile, I moved into the beach house permanently. I hired a property management company out of Astoria to handle future rentals professionally. I set up the house exactly how I wanted it. This was my home now, my sanctuary. The twist that shocked everyone? Emily's own words, her own text messages, had proven my parents knowingly stole my inheritance and planned to give it to her instead. She had destroyed their defense in less than 5 minutes of testimony. Justice was coming, and my family finally understood I was not backing down. The investigator followed me for 2 weeks, photographed me, interviewed people I knew. He was looking for anything: drug use, financial impropriety, academic dishonesty, relationship problems, anything to discredit me in court. He found nothing, because there was nothing to find. I had lived a quiet, honest life. I studied, I worked, I paid my bills. I had no criminal record, no scandals, no secrets. The investigator's report, which Gerald obtained through discovery, was almost comical. Subject maintains a routine schedule, attends classes, works part-time, has limited social life, no evidence of substance abuse, criminal activity, or moral failings. Subject appears to be a normal graduate student. My father paid that investigator $8,000 to learn that I was boring. Then Richard made the mistake that would cost him everything. Desperate to stop the case, he attempted to bribe Judge Martinez. He used an intermediary, a former colleague who knew people in the county courthouse. The intermediary approached the judge's clerk with an envelope containing $20,000 in cash and a note suggesting the judge might want to reconsider her rulings in the Caldwell case. The clerk immediately reported it. The intermediary, facing his own criminal charges, gave up Richard within hours. Federal investigators got involved. Attempted bribery of a judge is a federal crime. The FBI showed up at Richard's office with a warrant. Gerald called me with the news. "Mason, your father just made the worst decision of his life. He's facing federal charges now. This is beyond our civil case. This is prison time." The expensive Seattle legal team quit immediately. No reputable law firm wants to represent a client facing federal bribery charges. It's terrible for their reputation and usually a losing case. My parents were on their own. 3 days later, my mother called me from a number I did not recognize. I almost did not answer, but curiosity won. "Mason, please. I need to talk to you. Just coffee. Just the two of us." Gerald advised against it. "She's going to try to manipulate you. Don't give her the opportunity." But I wanted to hear what she had to say. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop in neutral territory, and I recorded the entire conversation on my phone. Patricia arrived looking smaller somehow. She was not wearing her usual designer clothes and perfect makeup. She looked tired, older, almost fragile. We sat down with our coffee. She started crying immediately. "Mason, I'm so sorry. I know we've hurt you. I know we were wrong. Your father, he controlled everything. I was afraid to speak up. I should have protected you, and I didn't. I'm a terrible mother." I listened without expression. She continued, "I do love you, Mason. I always have. I just didn't know how to show it. Your father has very specific ideas about how men should be, and you were never what he wanted. I should have stood up for you. I was weak. Why did you tell everyone at my 8th grade graduation that I was an embarrassment?" I asked quietly. She blinked. "What?" "8th grade. I won the Academic Achievement Award. You told Aunt Julie and Mrs. Henderson from next door that it was embarrassing how much I cared about grades instead of sports. I was standing right behind you. I heard every word." Her face crumbled. "Mason, I don't remember that. Why did you laugh when Emily called me a loser at Thanksgiving 4 years ago?" "I didn't laugh at that. You did. She said I was a loser for studying computer science instead of business. You laughed and said, 'Well, he's always done things the hard way.' Everyone at the table heard you." Patricia had no answer. "Why did you steal $70,000 from my college fund that my grandfather left specifically for my education?" "We didn't steal it. We borrowed it. We were going to pay it back." "You had 4 years to pay it back. You never did. You spent it on Emily's sorority and her trip to Europe, while I worked 3 jobs to afford textbooks." The tears stopped. Her expression shifted from apologetic to defensive. "You don't understand what it's like to maintain appearances in this city. The clubs, the charities, the expectations. Emily needed those experiences to build connections, and I needed the money my grandfather left me for my education. You were always going to be fine, Mason. You're smart. You don't need money the way Emily does." There it was. The truth under all the tears and apologies. I leaned forward. "Let me tell you what I understand, Mom. I understand that you made choices, Every single day for 22 years, you chose to treat me like I did not matter. You chose to prioritize Emily's wants over my needs. You chose to steal my inheritance. You chose to open credit cards in my name and destroy my credit. Those were your choices. We were trying to do what was best for the family. No, you were doing what was easiest for you, and now you have to live with the consequences. Her tears turned to anger. The mask dropped completely. You'll regret this, Mason. You're destroying this family. Your father might go to prison because of you. Emily might have to drop out of college. And for what? Money? A house? You've always been selfish. I stood up. I'm not destroying this family. You already did that. I'm just refusing to be destroyed with it. I walked out of that coffee shop and blocked her number. 2 days later, Emily showed up at the beach house. She was drunk, stumbling up the porch steps at 11 o'clock at night. I opened the door. She looked terrible. Hair uncombed, makeup smeared. She reeked of tequila. You ruined everything, she slurred. Mom and Dad are broke. They had to sell the house. I have to leave USC because we can't afford it anymore. All because you're a greedy, selfish prick. Emily, you need to leave. You had everything. You're so smart, everyone always said so. You could have done anything. But you had to take everything from us too. I took what was legally mine. That's all. Legally yours, she mocked. You sound like such a lawyer. You know what? I'm glad they hated you. You deserved it. She tried to push past me into the house. I stepped back and firmly closed the door between us. Leave, Emily, now, or I'm calling the police. She screamed obscenities at me through the door for 5 minutes. Then I heard her stumble back to her car. The next morning, I found deep scratches along the driver's side of my Honda. She had keyed it, scraping the paint down to bare metal. I filed a police report and added it to the growing file of evidence. That afternoon, I received an email that changed everything again. The sender was Sarah Brennan, my mother's younger sister, my aunt who lived in Boston whom I barely knew. The email read, "Dear Mason, we haven't spoken much over the years, and that's my fault. I distanced myself from your mother and that entire family dynamic long ago. But I've been following your situation, and I need to tell you something important. 25 years ago, I went through almost exactly what you're experiencing now. Your grandmother, my mother, was toxic and manipulative just like Patricia. I was the scapegoat in our family the way you are in yours. She pitted Patricia and me against each other, favored Patricia, and emotionally abused me for years. When our mother died, Patricia and I fought over the inheritance. Patricia won because she had all the power and connections. I walked away with almost nothing and rebuilt my life from scratch. I want you to know, you're doing the right thing. Standing up for yourself is the hardest and bravest choice you can make. I'm also reaching out because your grandfather contacted me before he died. He told me about leaving you the beach house and the stocks. He asked me to watch out for you if Richard and Patricia tried to cheat you. I failed at that, and I'm sorry. I should have checked in years ago, but I can help now. I'm a venture capitalist. My firm manages about 40 million in investments. If you have any business ideas, any projects you want to pursue, I can provide seed funding and mentorship. More importantly, I'm willing to testify in your case. I can speak to the generational pattern of abuse in our family. I can validate everything you've experienced. Please call me. Let me help. You're not alone. Your aunt, Sarah. I read the email 3 times. My mother's sister. Someone who had been through this exact situation. Someone who understood. And she was offering not just emotional support, but real, practical help. I called the number she provided. She answered on the first ring. Mason, I'm so glad you called. We talked for 2 hours. She told me her story, how my grandmother had been cruel and controlling, how Patricia learned those same behaviors and became just like her, how the family operated on a system of favorites and scapegoats that went back generations. You breaking that cycle, Sarah said. You're the first person in 3 generations to stand up and say no more. I'm so proud of you. The twist that would destroy my parents' remaining defense? Sarah agreed to testify. A successful businesswoman with no stake in the outcome willing to describe the family's history of abuse and manipulation. Her testimony would prove this was not just about money. It was about a pattern of toxic behavior spanning decades. My case was now unbeatable. The civil trial began on a cold morning in late October, 3 months after the initial filing. The courthouse was packed. Family members, curious locals, even a reporter from the Portland Tribune who had been following the case. My legal team had grown. Gerald remained lead counsel, but Sarah had connected me with 2 additional attorneys from her network who specialized in estate fraud. We had resources now. Real resources. My parents sat at the defense table with a court-appointed attorney. They could no longer afford private representation. Their Seattle firm had dropped them. Their assets were frozen pending the trial. They looked diminished somehow. Smaller. Older. Richard wore a cheap suit instead of his usual $1,000 tailored pieces. Patricia's hair had gone gray at the roots. Neither looked at me. Emily sat in the gallery, arms crossed, glaring. Judge Martinez presided. She had already made clear her opinion of my parents during the preliminary hearings, but she committed to hearing all evidence fairly. The trial lasted 5 days. Day 1 focused on the inheritance itself. Gerald methodically presented my grandfather's will. Handwriting experts testified that the signatures on the forged transfer documents did not match my grandfather's authentic signatures from other legal papers. We showed the rental income records proving my parents collected $1.4 million over 15 years on a property that legally belonged to me. The defense had no credible counter. Their court-appointed attorney, a young man fresh out of law school, tried to argue that the will was ambiguous. Judge Martinez shut that down immediately. Counselor, the will states, I leave my property at 214 Seaside Drive, Cannon Beach, Oregon, to my grandson Mason Robert Caldwell. That is not ambiguous. Day 2 covered the stock portfolios. Financial experts testified about the value of the stocks when my grandfather died versus their value today. If I had received them at age 10 as intended, and if they had been managed with even moderate competence, the portfolio would be worth over $1 million. My parents had transferred those stocks to themselves and spent the dividends. We also presented evidence of the hidden stock certificates from the safety deposit box. My parents had no idea those existed. The look on Richard's face when we revealed an additional $2 million in stocks was almost worth the entire ordeal. Day 3 was the identity theft. Credit experts walked the jury through every fraudulent credit card, every late payment, every ding to my credit score. We showed applications with my social security number and forged signatures. We proved I was 17 when most cards were opened, legally unable to consent. The defense tried to claim, I must have known about the cards and consented verbally. Our attorney asked Richard directly, did Mason know you were opening credit cards in his name? Richard, under oath, had to answer, no. So you committed identity theft against your own son. We needed the credit for family expenses. That's not what I asked. Did you or did you not open credit accounts using your minor son's identity without his knowledge or consent? Long pause. Yes. The jury looked disgusted. Day 4 brought the character witnesses. Frank Morrison testified about my grandfather's love for me and his concerns about Richard's ethics. He described conversations where my grandfather explicitly stated the beach house was for Mason because Richard could not be trusted. 3 of my former teachers testified about my character. They described a quiet, hard-working student who never caused problems. They talked about how I excelled academically despite having no family support at school events. Then Sarah took the stand. She was poised, articulate, and devastating. She described growing up with Patricia, watching their mother pit them against each other. She explained how Patricia learned manipulation and favoritism from their mother, and repeated the same pattern with her own children. I watched Mason grow up from a distance, Sarah said. I saw the same things happening to him that happened to me. Being ignored, being criticized, being treated as less than, and I did nothing, which I regret. But I'm here now to say this. The Caldwell family has a generational pattern of emotional abuse. Mason is not making this up. This is who they are. The defense attorney tried to discredit her. Miss Brennan, isn't it true you had a falling out with your sister and might be biased against her? I had a falling out with my sister because she treated me the way she now treats her son. Yes, I'm biased. I'm biased toward the truth. Day 5 was my testimony and closing arguments. I took the stand for 2 full days. I walked the jury through my entire childhood. Not with anger or tears, but with calm, factual descriptions, the forgotten birthdays, the missed events, the constant comparisons to Emily, the stolen college fund, the credit card fraud. I played the audio recordings of my parents' threatening phone calls after being served. I showed the video from graduation night, where they gave me the disownment letter for entertainment. Several jurors wiped their eyes. One woman in the back row cried openly. The defense cross-examined me, trying to paint me as vindictive or money-hungry. Mr. Caldwell, isn't it true you're seeking almost $5 million from your parents? I'm seeking what was stolen from me, plus damages for the harm they caused. The dollar amount is just math. You could have resolved this privately. Why take your own parents to court? I tried to resolve it privately. They laughed at me and told me to be grateful. Then they publicly humiliated me at my graduation. They left me no choice. Don't you feel any loyalty to your family? I feel loyalty to myself. Something I should have learned to do years ago. Then they made a critical mistake. They called Emily to testify again, hoping she could humanize the family. Emily took the stand wearing an expensive dress Sarah had probably paid for. She tried to portray Mason as a difficult child who made family life hard. He was always so serious and judgmental, she said. We just wanted him to relax and be part of the family. Gerald's cross-examination was surgical. Emily, did you enjoy being the favorite child? I wasn't the favorite. My parents loved us both. Gerald played a recording, Emily's voice. I love being the favorite. Mason's such a loser. The recording was from a conversation with her sorority sisters that had been posted on social media and later deleted. But the internet never forgets. Emily's face turned red. That was a joke. Was it a joke when you filmed your brother's reaction to being disowned for your entertainment? Everyone was filming stuff. It wasn't personal. You posted it on Instagram with a caption mocking him. I deleted that. But you posted it. You thought his pain was funny. Emily started crying. But this time, the jury did not look sympathetic. They looked tired of her tears. Then Richard took the stand, and everything fell apart. He was arrogant, defensive, showed zero remorse. He actually said, under oath, I built everything I have from nothing. I don't owe my son anything beyond what I already gave him. Gerald pounced. Sir, you owe your son what your father legally left him. My father didn't understand business. That beach house needed to generate income that went into your pocket. I managed the property. I deserved compensation. You deserved $1.4 million in compensation for managing a property you didn't own. Richard had no good answer. The judge interrupted. Mr. Caldwell, did you or did you not knowingly conceal your father's will and transfer assets meant for your son into your own name? Long pause. Richard knew he was trapped. Yes. Did you open credit cards in your minor son's name without his knowledge? Yes. Did you spend money from his college fund on your daughter's expenses? Yes. But, yes or no, Mr. Caldwell? Yes. Judge Martinez's expression was ice. You may step down. Patricia did not testify. Her attorney wisely kept her off the stand. Closing arguments were stark. Our team presented a clear narrative. Systematic theft, fraud, and emotional abuse spanning 22 years. The defense offered weak claims about family misunderstandings and suggested the dollar amounts we sought were excessive. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood and delivered the verdict, unanimous in favor of Mason Caldwell on all counts. The courtroom erupted in gasps, but the damages stunned everyone. The jury awarded me all rental income with 15 years of compound interest, $2.1 million, all stock portfolios with expected growth, $1.3 million, credit repair and identity theft damages, $100,000, and then the punitive damages, $1.5 million for intentional infliction of emotional distress and fraud. Total judgment, $4.9 million. nearly half of my parents' entire net worth. Judge Martinez added one final note. I'm referring this case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. What occurred here goes beyond civil matters. Richard's face turned purple with rage. He stood up, started yelling. This is theft! Judicial corruption! You can't do this! The bailiff moved toward him. Richard sat back down, but his hands shook with fury. Patricia fainted. Actually fainted. Medical personnel had to attend to her right there in the courtroom. Emily ran from the gallery, sobbing. I sat quietly, feeling not triumph, but a deep, profound sense of relief. It was over. Justice had been served in full. My family was finally facing the consequences of decades of cruelty, and I was free. 6 months after the trial, I stood on the deck of my beach house, watching the sun set over the Pacific Ocean. The autumn sky turned shades of orange and pink that seemed impossible, like something from a painting. The house was truly mine now. I had renovated it over the past months, updating the kitchen and bathrooms, while preserving the character my grandfather had loved. New windows that opened easier, fresh paint in calming blues and grays, comfortable furniture that actually matched. It was no longer frozen in time. It was a living, breathing home. My home. I had been accepted into the PhD program in computer science at Stanford University with a full scholarship. I would start in January. For the first time in my life, I was pursuing education entirely on my own terms, with no family pressure or expectations weighing on me. I had also launched a small tech startup with seed money from Aunt Sarah. We were developing educational software for underprivileged students, tools that would help kids from difficult backgrounds access quality learning resources. The company was called Second Chance Software, and it was gaining real traction. 3 school districts in Oregon were piloting our programs. Doing something good with the money felt right. My grandfather would have approved. My parents had been forced to liquidate most of their assets to pay the judgment. They sold their mansion in the West Hills and moved into a modest townhouse in Beaverton. Richard's real estate business had collapsed completely. The bribery charges resulted in a plea deal, 3 years probation, community service, and a massive fine that wiped out what little savings they had left. He also lost his real estate license permanently. Patricia had to get a job for the first time in 30 years. She worked as a receptionist at a dental office, answering phones and scheduling appointments. The country club membership was gone. The charity board positions were gone. The social status she had spent her entire adult life building had evaporated. Emily had to leave USC after 1 semester. She transferred to Portland State and got a job at a coffee shop near campus to help pay tuition. She was working 25 hours a week while taking classes, experiencing exactly what I had done for 4 years. I felt no satisfaction in their downfall, but I felt no guilt either. They had made their choices. Every single day for 22 years, they chose cruelty over kindness. They chose favoritism over fairness. They chose theft over honesty. Now they were living with the consequences of those choices. Some extended family members had reached out to apologize. Aunt Julie called crying, saying she should have paid more attention to how I was treated. Uncle Frank visited the beach house and spent an afternoon telling me stories about my grandfather. We talked about fishing and business and the value of integrity. Other relatives sided with my parents and cut me off completely. That was fine. I did not need people in my life who thought stealing from your own child was acceptable. Aunt Sarah had become exactly the family member I always needed. She visited every few weeks, bringing ideas for the business and advice about navigating my new financial reality. She taught me about investing, about wealth management, about using resources responsibly. She also shared stories about our family history that helped me understand the generational patterns of dysfunction. Your grandmother destroyed my self-esteem, she told me one evening over dinner. It took me 20 years of therapy to rebuild it, but I did rebuild it. And you will too, Mason. You're already halfway there. I had started therapy the month after the trial, working with a psychologist who specialized in family trauma. We talked through the childhood neglect, the emotional abuse, the constant feeling of not being good enough. It was hard work. Some sessions left me exhausted and raw, but it was helping. I had also started dating. Her name was Jordan Chen, a PhD candidate in environmental engineering I met through the graduate program. She was kind, brilliant, and had no connection to my past or my family drama. When I finally told her my story, she listened without judgment. "That must have been incredibly lonely," she said. "It was. But you survived, more than survived. You fought back with intelligence and dignity. That takes real strength." Having someone see me, really see me, for who I was and not what my family said I was, meant everything. On this particular evening, as the sun touched the horizon, I received a letter in the mail. Not an email, an actual handwritten letter on nice stationery. It was from Emily. I almost threw it away without reading it. But curiosity won. I opened the envelope and read, "Mason, I don't expect you to respond to this. I don't expect forgiveness or reconciliation. I just need to say things I should have said years ago. I was cruel to you, not just at graduation, but for years before that. I enjoyed being the favorite. I enjoyed the attention and the privileges. I knew Mom and Dad treated you differently, and I didn't care. I thought you deserved it somehow. That you were too serious, too boring, too different from us. I was wrong. Losing everything this year taught me who I really was without the money and status. I didn't like what I found. I was spoiled, entitled, and mean. I participated in your abuse. I laughed at your pain. I recorded your humiliation for entertainment. I can't take any of that back. I'm in therapy now. Dr. Phillips is helping me understand family dynamics and my role in the toxicity. I'm learning about scapegoating and favoritism, and how children can be complicit in abuse even if they didn't create the system. I'm learning that I hurt you. Badly. For years. And I'm so sorry. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but you deserve to hear it. You deserved better than what we gave you. You deserved parents who celebrated your intelligence and your kindness. You deserved a sister who supported you instead of mocking you. I can't change the past, but I'm trying to change myself. I don't know if you'll ever want a relationship with me. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. But I wanted you to know that I finally understand. I finally see what we did to you. And I'm ashamed. I hope you're happy, Mason. I hope you're building a good life. You deserve that. Emily. I read the letter twice. Then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer in my desk. Maybe someday I would respond. Maybe I would not. For now, it was enough to know she was learning. Enough to know she finally understood the damage she had caused. I was not ready to forgive yet. Maybe I never would be. But I could acknowledge her growth without offering reconciliation. Those were separate things. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared into the ocean, I thought about my journey. From the scared, lonely kid who believed he was not good enough, to the college student who discovered the theft and could have responded with rage and revenge. Instead, I chose strategy. I chose patience. I chose the law. I did not seek revenge. I sought justice. There is a profound difference between those two things. Revenge would have been about hurting them the way they hurt me. It would have been emotional, reactive, ultimately empty. Justice was about reclaiming what was mine, about standing up for myself with dignity, about using legitimate systems to correct illegitimate wrongs. Justice brought closure in a way revenge never could. I realized something important standing there on that deck. The greatest gift my parents ever gave me was not my grandfather's inheritance. It was that disownment letter. Not because it helped my legal case, though it did, but because it freed me. It gave me permission to stop trying to earn love from people incapable of giving it. It released me from the obligation to keep trying, to keep hoping they might change, to keep sacrificing myself for their approval. That letter was the final proof I needed that they would never love me the way I deserved. And once I accepted that truth, I could finally let go. I could build a life based on my own values instead of their expectations. I could define success on my own terms. I could choose family that chose me back. I thought about my grandfather and wished I could thank him, not just for the money and the property, though those helped, but for the message in those journal entries I found in the desk drawer. You are worthy of love. You are enough. For 22 years, I did not believe those words, but I believe them now. I pulled out my phone and texted Aunt Sarah, "Thank you for everything. for believing me, for supporting me, for being the family I needed. She responded immediately. Your grandfather would be so proud of you. I am too. You took a terrible situation and turned it into a new beginning. That takes courage. I smiled, genuine and peaceful. I was 23 years old. I had financial security that most people my age could not imagine. I had educational opportunities at one of the best universities in the world. I had meaningful work that helped others. I had authentic relationships with people who valued me. But more than any of that, I had something money could not buy and approval could not grant. I had self-respect. The life lessons settled over me like the evening mist rolling in from the ocean. Family is not defined by blood or obligation, but by love, respect, and mutual support. Sometimes the greatest act of self-love is walking away from people who cannot see your value. And when you stand up for yourself with integrity and patience, justice will follow. Not because the world is fair, but because you make it so. Standing up for yourself does not make you vindictive. Setting boundaries does not make you selfish. Claiming what is rightfully yours does not make you greedy. And refusing to accept abuse does not make you ungrateful. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. For 22 years I tolerated mistreatment because I thought I had to, because they were family, because I kept hoping they would change. But hope without action is just wishful thinking. And family that consistently hurts you is not family at all. It is just people who share your DNA. Real family shows up. Real family celebrates your successes. Real family protects you. Real family sees your worth even when the world does not. I found that family in Aunt Sarah, in Frank Morrison, in my professors who mentored me, in Jordan who chose to know the real me. I found it in the people who earned their place in my life through kindness and respect. And I built it in myself by finally believing I deserved better. I took a deep breath of salt air and walked inside my home. Tomorrow I would pack for the move to Stanford. Next week I would meet with investors about expanding Second Chance software. Next month I would celebrate my first holiday season free from family obligation and toxic dynamics. But tonight, I was simply at peace. The kid who was never good enough had become a man who knew his worth. The scapegoat had become the success story. The discarded son had become his own person, defined by his choices rather than his circumstances. And that was everything. So let me ask you something. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against people who were supposed to protect you? Have you ever had to choose your own peace over someone else's comfort? What would you have done in my situation? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like. It helps more people find these stories and know they're not alone in their struggles. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel for more stories about resilience, justice, and finding your own path. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to put yourself first, that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, that you deserve respect, even from family. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of this community. I hope you find the courage to claim your own worth, whatever that looks like for you. Take care of yourselves. You deserve it.